One thing you might not know about Vim is that behind the scenes, to do its undos and redos, it actually maintains a tree structure. And the best way to think of a tree is think of a Git repo and how it has a bunch of different branches. Basically, it's the same sort of idea. So when you make a modification in Vim, basically it's going to branch in some other direction. Now, when you just use undo and redo inside of Vim, it's not entirely clear that you are working with a tree because Vim is going to decide the best branch to actually jump onto. But you actually can go and move around this tree normally. The problem is, though, if you're working with a tree and you don't have a visual representation of it, it's going to be very hard to work out where you're actually going to be jumping to. So today's plugin is going to add in a visual representation of the tree to make it much easier to actually navigate around. And I think that by the time this video ends, you're going to agree with me that this is a really, really useful plugin. Okay, so over here, I've got a copy of my ZSHRC file, and I think the best way to demonstrate this plugin is to show you what it looks like as we're actually modifying the document. So if we go and run the command UndoTree, and then either run UndoTree toggle or UndoTree show. So toggle is basically going to, toggle it on and off. Show is going to show it. Hide is going to hide it. And if you have the window already open, then focus is basically going to focus you on that window. So I'm just going to run toggle for now. And as you're going to see, we have this sort of Git-like structure over here. So I'm just going to go back through the history. And as you can see, there are points where it actually goes and branches. If we go way back, as you can see, there are 3 branches going on at the same time right here. So let's just go right to the top and actually start making some modifications to the document. So if we go into insert mode and we start adding some lines in here, as you're going to see, nothing actually changes to the tree itself because inside of Vim, it doesn't actually save anything to its update tree until you leave insert mode. That's just because in vanilla Vim, I don't believe there is a way to actually go back in history while you're in insert mode, so there's not really any reason to actually save it. So if we go and leave insert mode now, as you're going to see, it's going to create a new node in the tree for every single line that we added. So as you can see, that went and created, 5 new nodes, and as you can see, there are 5 new nodes here. So what's going to happen if we try to go backwards in the history? So if we go and press U, as you're going to see, it takes us back 1 step. And if we press U again, as you're going to see, as we do that, it keeps removing the lines that we added in. So if we try to redo, then it's going to take us forward in the history. Well, what's going to happen if we go to a point where there's a branch in the document? Well, let's go all the way back and see what actually happens. Right here, as you can see, there's a branch. Now, there's 2 things that could possibly happen, but what Vim does is it always takes the leftmost branch. So as you can see, if we try to redo, it's going to take us onto this branch right here. And if we go all the way back, right to the start, if we try to redo from this point here, as you're going to see, it completely ignores these branches here and always takes this branch on the left here. But as I said, you actually can navigate to different points in the tree if you do want to do that. But before we get to that, I think I need to explain what's happening with the icons in the tree. So anything that has this less than and greater than sign on it basically is demonstrating where you are in the tree right now. So as you can see, it's saying that I'm on node 10. Now, anything that's surrounded by curly braces is basically the next state you're going to go to if you try to redo. So if I try to run redo here, as you're going to see, it's going to jump us to state 11, and then state 12 is our next redo state. And if we go to a point where there's a branch, as you can see, it shows that node 10 is the next state we're going to jump to with a redo, and we're focused on node 2 right now. Now, anything that has a square bracket on it, basically that means that's the most recent state of the document. So right now, node 40 is the most recent state. Anything marked with a capital S, that is going to be the latest point in the document where you actually ran save. And anything with a lowercase s basically represents any other point where you've saved the document. So if we go all the way back up to node 40 and we run :W, as you can see, this is now a save point. And this is now a previous save point. Okay, so the way you move around this tree is actually dead simple. So the easiest method is if you know there's a node you want to jump directly to, find the node you want to jump to, and then press enter on it. And that's going to work with the branches as well. So if we go and jump to node 18 here, as you're going to see, we jump onto this different branch. If we go all the way down to the start, and we say jump to this branch right here, as you can see, we jump to node 5, which is on this 3rd branch right here. Now, you can also jump to a previous save point by doing a less than sign. So if we do less than, as you can see, that jumps us to this save point here. If we do a greater than sign, it's going to jump us to the next save point. So if we keep pressing that, it's eventually going to take us to the most recent state of the document. Now, the other way to move through this, rather than trying to move through it and then select a node, is just pressing capital J, and that's going to jump us to the previous node, or capital K is going to jump us to the next node. Down here, we have a diff window. This window basically shows whatever was added in that new undo state. So if we go and say select this one down here, nothing was added there. I guess that must have been some weird state that Vim needed for some other thing. Let's say this line right here. As you can see, this bit of text was added in here. If we want to get rid of this window, all we have to do is press capital D, and that's then going to go and hide that. Personally, I like having the diff there just to see what was actually added in that undo state, but if you don't want it there, it's very easy to hide. So let's go and bring that back with capital D again. You can also press capital T to change how these timestamps are shown. So right now, they're in their short form. If you want the actual time they were added, just press capital T. If you press capital T again, it's going to change it back to that short form. And we can also clear the undo tree by pressing capital C. And it's going to prompt you to actually say yes to do that, because if you try to do this, you won't be able to undo any of the changes in the document. So what about merging the branches? How is that going to work? Well, luckily for us, because the tree is being maintained in the background of Vim all the time, it's basically going to just be handled by Vim, and you don't need to really think about it. So if we go and say, check out this branch right here, and let's say we go and actually make a modification to this. What it's going to do is basically just automatically merge it back into the rest of the tree. So as you can see, we now have this new node here, and also this massive branch showing that this point right down here is now connected into this point right here. So because this is something built directly into Vim, you don't need to think about merging the branches. It's just going to be done basically without you even thinking about it. Now, even with a fairly vanilla Vim experience, UndoTree is going to be really useful, but it's not going to be as useful as it can be. So you might have noticed this right here. The first state in my undo tree is from an entire day ago, and you probably know that when you quit out of a document in Vim, you're going to lose your entire undo tree. So if you open up a document you've edited before and you try to undo something, you're not going to be able to undo it. And that's because out of the box in Vim, it doesn't actually save the undo tree, but you can actually go and enable that. And the way you do that is by enabling your persistent history. And when you do that, it makes undo tree so much more useful, because then you can actually quit out of the document, come back to it, and still have the ability to actually go backwards in the tree. And the way that we go and enable this is either in our vimrc or our init.vim. So in my case, it's going to be my init.vim. We go and enable a very, very simple settings. Now down here, we have a very simple if check. Basically, this is saying, does my install of Vim actually have persistent undo enabled? Because some versions of Vim will be compiled without persistent history. So if your version does have that, then you're going to have to find a different version of Vim, or basically just live without it. Pretty much what we're doing in here is we're setting our undo directory. I've got it set to home/.undodir. You could put it in, say, your .local directory or .cache, wherever you want it to be put. And then basically you also run set undo file. And then once you've done that, you're going to have your persistent history enabled. Now, if you are planning to use UndoTree, I would highly suggest enabling this feature, because otherwise it's going to make UndoTree far, far less useful. Now, another thing I would recommend doing as well is key binding UndoTree toggle, or if you want to have it on separate keys, UndoTree show and UndoTree hide. Personally though, I prefer working with toggle keys. And the reason why you want to do this is because having to write out that command every single time you want to use it, obviously it's not a massive command, but you're going to be far less likely to use it if you have to write that command out every single time. And I find that putting stuff on the alt keys is generally going to be pretty safe, because most plugins typically don't touch the alt keys, and anything bound on the alt keys in vanilla Vim is going to be bound on something else as well. So the alt keys are generally going to be a pretty safe place to work with. Obviously, you could also use something like your leader key, but for things like this, I prefer to use my alt keys. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and before I looked at this plugin, I didn't actually realize that Vim actually had an undo tree behind everything that was going on. I had assumed that it was just a linear history, because when you run redo and undo, that's sort of the way it acts like. It's not really showing you that there's a tree there, but turns out there is one, and plugins like this will expose that tree to make it so much easier to work with. If you do want to go work with the tree directly, I might leave some links down below on how to actually do that, but I would suggest using a plugin like this because working with a tree when you can't see the tree, as I said at the start of the video, not going to be a fun experience. So this is probably going to be much easier to use than just working with vanilla Vim. So I think that's pretty much everything for me. But before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Corbinian, Andrew, Craig, Nathan, Montezar, Joseph, Peter D. Road, Tony Donald, Marek, Mikkel, Spagin, Thais, and Zilva. If you want to go support my work, there'll be some links down below to my Patreon and subscribe, and all that stuff. I think all of it is now also on my coin tree. That's got a bunch of other support links as well, basically because my description was getting way too big with links. Also, remember to go check out my podcast, that is Tech of a Tea, available on Library, BitTube, BitChute, and places you can listen to audio podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go check it out on Library, BitTube, BitChute, or any other alternative platform as well, just so I can build up those platforms outside of YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.